The truth about healing. Why some wait and others don't. Some wounds close quickly, almost miraculously, while others remain open as if time itself had forgotten them. You've probably witnessed this contrast. One person rises from illness or emotional devastation with surprising speed, while another remains stuck, repeating the same story of pain for years. And the question echoes inside us. Why? What separates those who heal from those who wait endlessly for relief? The answer isn't just hidden in medical charts, nor is it found only in fate or luck. The truth lies in the delicate intersection of mind, body, and perception. Healing is not just about the physical process of tissue repair or the disappearance of symptoms. It's about the way the nervous system interprets reality, the way thoughts shape hormones, and the way emotions either open the door to restoration or lock it shut. Neuroscience shows us that healing is a dance between biology and belief. Philosophy reminds us that the way we interpret suffering can either chain us to it or set us free. And psychology exposes how invisible scripts, running silently in the background of our mind, determine whether we are active participants in our healing or passive prisoners of waiting. This journey we are about to take together isn't about abstract theories or promises of instant transformation. It's about looking clearly, without illusions, at the forces inside you that decide how healing unfolds. You'll see that some of these forces accelerate recovery, while others create delays that feel endless. But the most important discovery you'll make is that waiting is never neutral. Every day of waiting changes the way your brain functions, the way your heart responds, and the way your body organizes itself. So stay with me, because in the next few minutes, you'll uncover a truth that has the power to reshape the way you understand your own healing. You'll see why some cross the bridge to renewal faster, and why others remain on the shore, watching the water flow without moving forward. And maybe, just maybe, you'll recognize that you hold more influence over this process than you were ever told. The mystery of unequal healing. Imagine two people facing the same diagnosis. They sit in the same waiting room, hear the same words from the doctor, even receive the same treatment plan. Yet weeks later, one is walking back into life with renewed strength, while the other feels unchanged, still trapped inside their suffering. This paradox is where the mystery of unequal healing begins. We often assume that healing should follow a predictable path, but life teaches us otherwise. The body, mind, and spirit do not respond in identical ways, and this difference sparks both frustration and wonder. Science shows us that biology plays its role. Genetics, immune system variations, and cellular resilience all matter. But psychology reveals another layer: how someone thinks about their illness, how they hold on to hope or surrender to despair, can influence outcomes just as much as medication. Emotional resilience acts like an inner medicine, invisible yet powerful, shaping the speed and depth of recovery. And philosophy challenges us with the idea that suffering is not only endured, but also interpreted. Marcus Aurelius once said that what matters most is not what happens, but how we respond to what happens. This truth explains why two people in the same circumstance may live entirely different experiences of healing. What if healing is not only a biological process, but also a story we tell ourselves? A story of overcoming, of resilience, of reclaiming strength, or a story of endless waiting where pain defines identity. Understanding this difference is the first step to realizing that unequal healing is not random. It is the result of complex forces weaving together, shaping outcomes in ways most of us never see. The mystery remains, but the clues are here, waiting to be uncovered. Time is not the healer. We believe it is. We grow up hearing the phrase, "Time heals all wounds," as if the simple passage of days and years carried a magical power to erase pain. Yet, reality tells us another story. Some people wait decades for healing that never comes, while others transform in what feels like a single breath. Time on its own is passive. It doesn't repair a broken mindset, release suppressed emotions, or rewire a nervous system trapped in survival mode. Waiting without action often deepens suffering, reinforcing mental and emotional patterns that hold the wound in place. Neuroscience shows us why. The brain adapts to whatever it repeats. If day after day we rehearse fear, resentment, or hopelessness, neural pathways strengthen those states, making them the default. In this way, time can actually deepen the imprint of pain instead of dissolving it. Psychology echoes this reality. Unexamined waiting often becomes avoidance, and avoidance is the oxygen that keeps wounds alive. What truly heals is not the clock ticking forward, but the shifts we create in the present moment. Decisions, new habits, renewed beliefs, conscious reframing of what once defined us. Philosophy reminds us that time is neutral. It is not the healer, it is merely the stage. On that stage, some choose to act, while others remain still. Aristotle would say that virtue lies in the habit of practice. Healing then becomes a practice, not a gift of the calendar. The truth is confronting. Time alone heals nothing. It is what we do within time, the choices we make, the meanings we create, that determine whether wounds fade or deepen. The biology of belief. Every thought you entertain, every emotion you nurture, sends signals through your entire body. Belief is not just an abstract idea, it is a biological event. When someone truly believes in the possibility of healing, their brain releases chemical messengers that alter immunity, regulate inflammation, and strengthen resilience. Hope is not naive optimism. It is a measurable force. Research shows that expectation itself can trigger dopamine release, activate the reward system, and mobilize the body toward repair. What you believe shapes what your cells do. On the other hand, doubt and hopelessness also leave their marks. When belief collapses, the brain increases stress hormones like cortisol, weakening the immune response and slowing recovery. Neuroscience proves what ancient wisdom always suggested: the mind and body are inseparable. The placebo effect is often dismissed as imaginary healing, but it is one of the clearest examples of how conviction changes biology. The body listens carefully to the stories the mind repeats, translating them into physical states. Philosophers like Descartes explored the separation of mind and body, but modern science reveals their intimate dance. Joe Dispenza's work on neuroplasticity shows that changing your mental state rewires your brain, which in turn reshapes your body's capacity to regenerate. Healing becomes less about waiting for external rescue and more about cultivating inner conviction. To believe is not to fantasize, it is to activate dormant pathways of health that exist within you. The biology of belief teaches us that the question is never only, what treatment did you receive, but also, what story did you accept as true? When the nervous system holds the pain, the body remembers what the mind tries to forget. Trauma, unresolved stress, and emotional wounds often leave imprints not only in memory, but in the very wiring of the nervous system. Instead of returning to balance, the body can remain locked in survival mode, as if danger never ended. This is why some people struggle to heal even when the external threat has passed. Their nervous system continues to fire signals of defense, keeping muscles tense, sleep disrupted, and inflammation high. Andrew Huberman explains that the autonomic nervous system, especially the balance between the sympathetic fight or flight response and the parasympathetic rest and restore state, is central to healing. If the body never shifts back into calm regulation, the processes needed for recovery, tissue repair, immune efficiency, emotional stability, are delayed or blocked. It's not stubbornness or weakness, it's physiology. The nervous system has been trained to expect pain, and so it keeps responding as if the wound is still present. Stoic philosophy helps us see this from another angle. Seneca once wrote that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. The nervous system can't always distinguish between an actual wound and the constant replay of fear or stress in the mind. The more often we replay the inner movie of our pain, the more the body reacts as though the danger is alive. Healing then requires more than treatment. It demands retraining the nervous system, teaching it to recognize safety again, to let go, and to allow restoration to flow. The silent scripts of the mind. Beneath conscious awareness, thoughts run like hidden programs, quietly shaping how we experience pain and how quickly we recover from it. These silent scripts can be as subtle as a whispered belief, "I'll never get better," or as deeply rooted as the conviction that suffering is simply who we are. Cognitive behavioral therapy, as developed by Judith Beck and others, reveals how these distorted thoughts influence not just mood, but also the body's ability to heal. When the mind repeats negative predictions, the brain and nervous system take them as commands, preparing for defeat instead of renewal. These inner scripts often form in childhood or after repeated experiences of loss. They operate automatically, so much so that people don't realize they are carrying invisible narratives that sabotage healing. They say, "It's genetic," or "This is my fate," without noticing the weight of those words on their biology. Neuroscience confirms that repeated thoughts strengthen neural pathways, turning temporary doubts into long-standing obstacles. The mind becomes a loop that rehearses limitation, and the body follows. Yet awareness itself is transformative. The moment we identify a destructive script, we create space for change. New beliefs, rehearsed with intention, can overwrite old ones. Stories of resilience and self-worth can replace silent sabotage. Marcus Aurelius advised examining our thoughts with rigor, discarding those that weaken us. Healing requires this same mental discipline. The question is not only, what treatment am I receiving, but also, what story am I silently repeating? Because until the inner script shifts, the body often remains in waiting. Emotional resistance, why we cling to what hurts. There are moments when pain becomes more than an experience. It becomes an identity. Some people unconsciously hold on to wounds because letting go feels like losing a part of themselves. The mind whispers that without the story of suffering, they will no longer know who they are. This resistance is rarely conscious. It is a hidden loyalty to pain, built from years of self-definition around struggle. To release it would mean rewriting the narrative of one's life, and that can feel more frightening than the pain itself. Psychology calls this secondary gain, the hidden benefits we receive from holding on to illness or suffering. It might be the attention it brings, the sense of belonging in a group defined by similar wounds, or even the excuse it provides for avoiding difficult changes. In these cases, the pain is not only endured, it is protected. The body may be capable of healing, but the identity resists because it fears the unknown of life without that pain. Philosophy sheds light here too. Montaigne once wrote that man often prefers the familiar chain to the risk of freedom. Healing demands courage because it requires leaving behind what has been familiar, even if it has been heavy. Neuroscience confirms this tension. The brain is wired to resist change, clinging to familiar patterns no matter how destructive they may be. True healing, then, is not just about mending the body, but about confronting the parts of us that are invested in staying wounded. The real challenge is not only asking, "How do I heal?" but also, "Am I willing to release who I became through my pain?" Dopamine, focus, and the speed of recovery. Healing is not only a matter of medicine or willpower, it is also a matter of chemistry. Dopamine, often called the molecule of motivation, plays a decisive role in how quickly we move from suffering to recovery. When the brain anticipates progress, dopamine rises, sharpening focus, energizing the body, and driving us forward. This is why people who truly believe in their capacity to heal often notice small improvements faster. Their focus shifts to signs of recovery, which strengthens dopamine release, creating a self-reinforcing cycle of hope and regeneration. But the opposite is also true. When someone fixates on what is not changing, dopamine levels drop. The brain interprets this lack of progress as failure, feeding discouragement and slowing recovery. The nervous system then remains in a state of stagnation, where attention is locked onto pain instead of possibilities. Andrew Huberman often emphasizes that where we place our focus directly influences how our brain adapts. Focus on setbacks, and the brain learns despair. Focus on subtle growth, and the brain learns renewal. This doesn't mean we deny reality or pretend pain doesn't exist. It means we consciously train our focus to recognize the small, often overlooked signs that healing is underway. A deeper breath, a calmer thought, a lighter day. Each recognition is fuel. The brain responds by releasing more dopamine, accelerating the process. Healing is not just a passive event. It is a dynamic feedback loop between focus, chemistry, and action. The speed of recovery often depends on what you choose to see and where you choose to direct your mind. The role of storytelling in healing. Every human being lives inside a story. The way we describe our pain, whether as a tragedy, a punishment, or a journey of transformation, shapes how our mind and body respond to it. Storytelling is not just about words, it is about framing reality. When someone tells themselves, "I am broken and nothing will change," the nervous system receives that narrative as a command. Muscles tense, immunity weakens, and the body remains in defense. But when the story shifts to, "I am in the process of becoming whole again," the brain begins to activate circuits of resilience and restoration. Modern psychology shows that narrative therapy helps people rewrite the meaning of their suffering, turning wounds into chapters instead of full identities. Neuroscience confirms this power. The brain reorganizes around repeated stories. Every time we retell our pain as insurmountable, we strengthen despair. Every time we retell it as survivable and meaningful, we strengthen healing pathways. The words we choose are not decoration, they are instructions to the body. Philosophy has always understood this. Montaigne wrote that we must learn to speak honestly of our wounds, but also to give them shape through reflection. Aristotle would argue that the stories we live by guide our habits, and habits are what form our destiny. Healing, then, is as much about the narrative we cultivate as it is about the treatments we pursue. To change the story is to change the outcome. The question becomes, are you telling yourself a story that keeps you waiting, or one that carries you forward into renewal? Ancient wisdom on suffering and renewal. Long before neuroscience measured dopamine or psychology mapped cognitive distortions, ancient thinkers wrestled with the mystery of pain and healing. The Stoics believed that suffering itself was not the enemy. It was our interpretation of it that determined whether it destroyed us or refined us. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that pain was part of nature's order, a call to exercise strength rather than a curse to endure passively. Seneca argued that hardship was the training ground of the soul, a forge in which resilience was created. Aristotle approached the question differently, teaching that habits shape character, and that character shapes destiny. For him, healing was not a random event, but the fruit of repeated choices. By cultivating moderation, courage, and discipline, a person trained their inner world to resist despair and lean toward balance. In this sense, recovery was not only physical, but moral and practical, an alignment of the self with principles that sustain vitality. Montaigne added a voice of introspection, observing that to suffer is human, but to reflect on suffering gives us a chance to transform it. He saw that by examining our pain and writing about it, we loosen its grip and open space for renewal. These perspectives converge with modern science. Resilience, habit formation, and reframing experience all accelerate healing. The wisdom of the ancients whispers the same truth in different words, that healing is not just waiting for the body to repair, but actively reshaping the meaning of pain. Renewal is born when we stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What strength can I create through this?" Spiritual openness and the healing current. There are dimensions of healing that cannot be explained by biology alone. Throughout history, people have testified that surrendering to something greater than themselves opened a door that medicine alone could not. Spiritual openness is not about dogma. It is about allowing the mind and body to rest in a state of trust rather than control. When the heart releases its grip on fear and opens to faith, whether in God, in life, or in a transcendent order, the nervous system shifts from defense into flow. This inner shift changes physiology. Stress hormones decrease, breathing deepens, and the body enters a state where repair becomes possible. Neuroscience suggests that meditation, prayer, and deep contemplation activate brain regions linked to calm, empathy, and resilience. These practices create coherence between mind and body, aligning rhythms of the heart, breath, and neural activity. The result is a biological environment favorable to healing. Psychology reinforces this. Faith provides meaning, and meaning gives strength. People who believe their suffering serves a purpose often endure less despair and show greater recovery. Philosophy also speaks here. Descartes sought certainty, but spiritual openness invites us to step into mystery, trusting what reason alone cannot explain. It teaches that healing does not always arrive through effort. Sometimes it flows when effort ceases. Like a river unclogged, renewal begins when we stop resisting and allow life's current to move freely again. To be spiritually open is not to escape suffering, but to invite a force greater than ourselves to work with us in transforming it. This current, once entered, carries many from waiting into profound healing, choosing the state that invites healing. Healing is not only a response to treatment, it is a state we create and sustain within ourselves. Every day, consciously or unconsciously, we choose an inner environment that either welcomes restoration or resists it. Fear, anger, and despair tighten the body, keeping it in a defensive posture that delays repair. Gratitude, calm, and trust, on the other hand, open the body into a state where recovery becomes possible. This is not mystical thinking, it is biology. The nervous system responds to emotional states, and those states determine whether it prepares for war or for renewal. Andrew Huberman explains that the brain's capacity to adapt is directly influenced by the quality of our attention and emotional tone. A mind trained to notice even small signs of progress signals safety to the body, which in turn accelerates healing processes. Judith Beck would add that deliberate reframing of thoughts, shifting from "I will never heal" to "I am learning to heal," changes not only emotions but physical outcomes. Aristotle would remind us that repeated choices form habits, and habits form character. Healing, then, is the habit of cultivating inner states that align with growth instead of decline. This choice is available in every moment. Even when pain is real, we can decide whether to live as if healing is unfolding or as if it is impossible. The state you inhabit becomes the soil in which your body plants its response. A closed state suffocates growth. An open state nurtures it. To invite healing is to create daily conditions, mental, emotional, spiritual, that tell your body it is safe to restore. The moment. Healing begins. Healing rarely announces itself with fanfare. It begins quietly, often in the exact moment a person shifts from waiting to choosing. It may be the instant they decide to no longer define themselves by the wound, or when they choose to trust that renewal is possible, even if the evidence is not yet visible. That moment of decision rewires the mind, softens the nervous system, and gives the body permission to move out of defense and into repair. Healing begins not with the passage of time, but with the alignment of belief, focus, and state. This is the turning point, realizing that healing is not something we chase in the future, but something we step into now. The body listens when the mind changes its story. The nervous system relaxes when the heart lets go of fear. The immune system strengthens when hope returns. Science proves it, philosophy echoes it, and lived experience confirms it. The moment of healing is the moment we embody the possibility of wholeness, not as an idea, but as a way of living each day. Some will continue to wait, hoping time will deliver what they desire. Others will awaken to the truth that waiting is only a posture, and that renewal begins the second they choose it. That is the dividing line between those who remain in pain and those who rise. The truth about healing is not hidden in fate or luck. It is hidden in the choices we make with our thoughts, our focus, and our courage to step into life again. And when that choice is made, healing doesn't delay. It begins. It